Okay, so next we have Nelson, who's going to drag something out of Emory Connect for us about church growth. And Nelson is the editor of Global Missiology. He's adjunct professor of missiology, and he's involved in a number of mission research networks, another guy with many hats. Nelson, and he's a good friend of mine. So I'm glad to listen to you now, Nelson.
Thank you very much, Chris. And let me see here if I can get to where I need to go. There we go. All right. Happy to be with you all. And some of you who were part of the conference in the fall, I hope, will recall the introduction to Emory Connect that I gave then. And I know that some of you are involved in Emory Connect. That's the Alliance for Mission Researchers and Institutions. And the idea behind Emory Connect is to enable academic institutions, mission agencies, individual researchers, and all to upload information that's been published, reports, whatever the case might be, so that we all can be as aware of what's happening, what isn't happening, and collaborate and connect with each other. The site operates in all sorts of different languages. And I'm showing you now, you can see my screen, I trust. The homepage of Emory Connect on the right side of the screen, by the way, is just a screenshot taken from my smartphone. You can go there as well. But I'll remind you that the site operates in 8 languages, and you can upload information in all sorts of languages. It doesn't matter. What I'm going to go through today is just a sample of finding a paper and gleaning some information from it, and introduce that to you. And I'll be showing you screenshots instead of going live. This was a live, those search that I did, and this really was a search. I wanted to learn about Japan, something in the site about Japan, and let's see what came up. Well, all sorts of a few publications. The site is still growing, but these were some publications that had Japan in the title. There are others that are about Japan, but this are just a few that came up. Well, currently, there are no communities created explicitly with Japan, organizations similar, and only a few people. Now, I know this guy here, Stefan Vanderwat. He's a fine guy. And so I decide I'm going to see his profile. And lo and behold, this is what comes up. Stefan is a South African. He's been in Japan with his family for about 12 or 13 years. He's serving in Kobe at the Kobe Reformed Seminary. And he does some outstanding research. He's very pastorally focused and some groundbreaking kinds of research that he's doing. I see this paper right here. So I want to read more. I'm going to click there. And this information about the paper entitled Missional Diaconal Practices in Japan and South Africa, Tracing its Formative Potential During Natural Disasters. Now that sounds rather academic. Fair enough. Stefan is an academic. He's a scholar. He's also extremely pastoral, passionate about evangelism, about church growth and development. And so that's what this paper is about. This is small print. Let me expand it for you. This particular article reflects on missional diaconal practices in different congregations connected with the Dutch Reformed Church in South Africa and the Reformed Church in Japan. They're in different contexts, yes, but they're both facing secular societies. How can congregations develop deeper fellowship, have more direct community involvement, and embody the gospel and foster church formation and evangelistic growth? Each country has experienced natural disasters that the article discusses, and as churches serve amidst those disasters, they give witness, they serve, and in deep fellowship among each other and with the surrounding community is what this paper is exploring and what he is exploring with his students and pastoral training. So I'm going to click up here to get the paper. Now, currently, this says English because the paper is in English. I think later this is probably going to be changed to download to give a little more clarity as to what it actually you get when you click there on the site. And I see that the paper comes out. It's a 25-page PDF. I'm not going to drone on through the entire paper. Don't worry. I've just highlighted some aspects of the paper to give you a feel for the kind of research that this particular paper is about. This explores, the paper does, the impact of missional diaconal practices of congregations and their potential for how churches are to take shape in evangelistic service and growth in the midst of natural disasters in the respective context. I just lifted different components of Stefan's paper about the context, the religious context of Japan and South Africa. And I will tell you that Stefan, he knows Japan, he knows South Africa. He's one of these trilingual people who speaks other languages as well. And I was in Japan for a while. We've spoken in Japanese. His Japanese is outstanding. He teaches and writes in Japanese. And so you can have an assurance that he knows what he is talking about Japan's religious context, about the challenges that face the Reformed Church and other churches in Japan, the religious landscape and context in South Africa, and what the Dutch Reformed Church has undergone with the dismantling of apartheid and its former connection with it, etc., and how the DRC's diaconia and service is connected with the very core of its missional calling. And so when he looks at common themes, he sees those taking shape amidst natural disasters that have taken place in Japan, with all the earthquakes and tsunamis and floods in Japan, droughts and fires in South Africa. And so amidst those catastrophes, churches have been able to grow and to serve and give gospel witness. Another common thread between the two is the partnership, which you may not have been aware of, between the Reformed Church of Japan and the Dutch Reformed Church of South Africa. And Stefan is one example of how that partnership has borne fruit. As Reformed churches, they bear certain marks of preaching, of service, of fellowship, and worship. And that facilitates how it is that these churches can learn from each other and grow in quality and in quantity in giving witness in their respective settings. How to be missional and diaconal together as churches grow. See a new paradigm for how it is that churches, which typically are quite small in Japan, in the wake of the 3/11 catastrophe of 2011 in northern Japan with the tsunami and the nuclear disaster and the flooding, how there's been a tremendous amount of Christian witness that has been connected with service in the wake of that catastrophe. And so the conclusion of Stefan's paper is that these natural disasters, both in South Africa and in Japan, have created all sorts of new opportunities for church service and communicating the gospel, enfleshed in active solidarity with the surrounding communities. This is what it means to be the body of Christ in a missional sense, in responding to human suffering in both of those settings. And that is fundamental to how churches need to be shaped and form and grow both in South Africa and in Japan. These are new and fresh ways to grow, and as churches, Stefan is pointing out, and as he is teaching and taking part in church ministry in the Reformed Church of Japan, these are the kinds of congregations which, again, typically are small in number, but in quiet, humble service, speaking, living out the gospel as congregations growing there. So there again, that is a particular paper from this particular scholar and pastor and missionary. This is the particular information about the paper, and there are many other, of course, papers and publications on Emory Connect. If you're not a part yet of Emory Connect as an individual, you agree with the mission of it, which I think everyone on this conference will, you are free to join. Your organization can make an application to join. It's free, certainly for individuals and organizations, depending on your size and income, are asked to make a small contribution. But again, it's multilingual and looking for your participation. And again, I've just given you one very small sample of what is available on Emory Connect. So Chris, I'll take it back to you. And I don't know if there's time for any questions now, but I'm happy to entertain any that someone might have now or later. Thank you.
We have a moment for questions. If anyone has a question, raise your hand. And if you do that within a few seconds, we'll give that to Nelson. Otherwise, we'll move on to our next presenter. Anyone? Yes, Jim Haney. Jim, speak and unmute yourself first.
There we go. Thanks. That's great. The Emory site looks great. I was just going to ask, first of all, compliment here that it's great to see in missional research somebody doing something with the narrative or the part that might be passed over easily in databases because it's unstructured data. It's dissertations, it's scholarly information, otherwise might not be seen in columns and rows. So that's good news. I'm just, you mentioned also registering for Emory, going to the site, finding the site, registering, and then using it. My question is how is the Emory site integrated or interoperable? Does it use any codes, and is it discoverable from other sites? Which brings up one of the reasons for having codes and categories is that it's discoverable and it's interoperable on the internet. I hope you get my question.
I do. The coding is not the same as the types of coding that we've been discussing so far today, but there is membership security, if you will. So it's not totally open to the entire internet. Common links are just beginning to take shape because Emory Connect is still a new site. So what the cross-referencing and open access on the internet will be is still something that's being worked out in a very new venture still.
Thank you.
It's a muddled answer, but we're working on those arenas.
Yeah, I guess, Chris, what I'm asking here, generally speaking, just as a follow-up, is the interoperability and discoverability of missions information as integrated as far as it relates to corporate memory of what we have as a missions community, because much of it is lost or not discoverable.
Yep. So Emory Connect is a big stride forward in that way, Jim, for these sort of research papers. But yeah, you're asking a good question about joining up the different parts of our discussion today. That would be a step forward even more. Okay, we need to move on.